Hello everyone. Today we'll be learning about inscribed angles and polygons. So first some vocabulary. An inscribed angle is an angle whose vertex is on a circle, so it's on a circle, and whose sides contain chords of the circle. So for example, in this diagram here, my angle BAC is an inscribed angle. And that's because my vertex A is on the circle, and then my sides AB and AC are chords of the circle. And then on the other hand, the intercepted arc is an arc that lies between two lines, rays, or segments. So in this picture here, my intercepted arc from this inscribed angle would be my arc BC. And so that takes us to our first theorem, and the first theorem tells us that a measure of an inscribed angle is half the measure of its intercepted arc. So if I'm looking at this diagram right here, my angle BAD would equal to half of the measure of its intercepted arc, which again is this BD. So it'd be half of the measure of arc BD. And so on the flip side of it, that means that the measure of arc BD is equal to 2 times the measure of angle BAD. And so this always just works with inscribed angles and its intercepted arc. So only with these angles that have its vertex on the circle. Because remember, if this were instead this angle here, where my vertex is the center circle, these two measures would be the same, as we have learned about in earlier lessons. So this only works for those with the inscribed angle and its intercepted arc. So let's go through some examples of finding some of these measures. So looking at number 1, I have this circle here, and I want to find the measure of angle T. So I see I have angle T is right here, and I know from my theorem that the measure of angle T is going to be equal to half of its intercepted arc. And so I want to see where my angle goes, and I see it goes from R to S, so I'm looking at this arc right here. So that means it's going to be half of 48, which is equal to 24 degrees. Okay, now I'm going to look at finding the measure of arc QR. So I want to find the measure of this arc. So I see that this arc is not an intercepted arc of an angle. However, I do have this angle 50 degrees, and I see that its intercepted arc is QT. And I know that my arc TQR is a semicircle, so I know this whole thing adds up to being 180. So to find QR, I first need to find QT, and then I need to subtract that from 180. So the measure of QT, of arc QT, now looking back at my theorem, the arc is twice the measure of the inscribed angle, and the inscribed angle here is 50 degrees, so it's going to be 2 times 50, which is equal to 100. And so to find the measure of QR, since this whole thing is a semicircle, because I know because TR is going through the center, so it is the diameter. I know this whole thing's 180. I know this part QT is 100. So to find QR, I just need to do 180 minus 100, and I get 80 degrees. Okay, let's look at number 2. So number 2, we first want to find the measure of arc RS. So I want to find the measure of this arc right here. Well, I see it really has 2 inscribed angles. I see I have my inscribed angle STR that make up that arc, but I don't know that angle measure, so I can't use that. However, it also has an inscribed angle RUS, and I know that that one is 31 degrees. And I know from my theorem that the measure of arc RS is twice the inscribed angle, so it's going to be 2 times 31, which gets me 62 degrees. Now I want to find the measure of angle STR, so I actually want to know that first angle measure that we drew in. So I want to know what this measure is. Well, we just found that SR is 62 degrees. And so I know that the measure of angle STR is equal to half of the measure of the intercepted arc, so half of 62, which is equal to 31 degrees. So something that you notice here is that these 2 angles, STR and RUS, actually end up being congruent. And we'll talk about that in our next video. Okay, and now for this last one, I want to find first the measure of arc FD. And I don't have my inscribed angle measure. My inscribed angle is this angle FGD, but I don't know the angle measure. However, I do know the measure of arc DG, and I know the measure of arc FG. And so to find the measure of arc FD, I know that all of the arcs in a circle add up to 360. So that means that the measure of arc FD is just going to equal to 360 minus these 2 arcs. So minus 70 and minus 120. And so when I do that, I do 360 minus 70 minus 120, and I get 170 degrees. Now I want to find the measure of angle G. And so I just found that the measure of arc FD is 170 degrees, and I know that the measure of angle G is equal to half of the measure of the intercepted arc. So it's going to be half of 170. And when I divide 170 by 2, I get that measure of angle G is equal to 85 degrees.